The philosophy of yin and yang is applied to the martial art of Tai Chi in the same way that it is applied to many different martial arts. Applying yin and yang to martial arts, they often think of it in a rather simplistic and very dualistic way. And the most common thing that you will hear is people saying that, well, if the opponent pushes, I pull. If they pull, I push. And if they come at me like a bullet train, then I just get off the tracks. And this strategy can work under many circumstances, but this is not really the meaning of yin and yang as it's applied to martial arts, especially the internal styles, at least at the more advanced levels. In the beginning, of course, you want to make sure that you are not opposing your opponent, so you don't force against them and you don't retreat away from them. You don't want to break contact. So you want to move with them. If they are pushing, you will tend, as a technique, to allow them to push in a way that doesn't push you over, and if they're pulling, then you want to move with them rather than resisting. And this principle is true, but it's leaving something out, and that is the internal balance that is necessary to make any technique work. If the opponent pushes and I pull, I will probably succeed in getting them off balance if they do not have an inherent internal balance themselves. It's possible to push in such a way that does not compromise your balance, and it's possible to pull in such a way that does not compromise your balance. So the attempt to try to be yin to the other person's yang, or yang to the other person's yin, does not always work. If we don't balance the opponent's energy, we balance our own energy, and allow the opponent's energy to be unbalanced, we maintain a harmony of yin and yang within ourselves, and in so doing we increase our power and our balance and our root, and we become more yang relative to the opponent. The opponent, if they are trying to be extremely yin or extremely yang, they are creating an imbalance within themselves. If I am really a master of a martial art, if I'm really a master of Tai Chi philosophy, then I am one with the universe. There is no enemy. I do not confront my opponent. I do not try to balance relative to them. I become balanced internally in and of myself, and the opponent defeats themselves by the nature of their own attack. Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido, said, there is no enemy in Aikido. I am one with the universe, and if someone attacks me, they defeat themselves by the nature of their own attack. Yin and Yang espouses the power of softness, and how the soft can overcome the hard, and how the hard contains the soft, and vice versa. Tai Chi, we often talk about the power being as if it's a needle wrapped in cotton, meaning that internally there is a very powerful structure, but on the surface it seems very soft. This is why when we engage an opponent and we are relaxed and properly aligned, then when they push us, they don't seem to find anything to push against, because they have a very hard time finding our center. We are so soft that we can easily neutralize their force, but if they do engage our center, we redirect it into the earth, and we have so much internal power that they cannot move us. One of my teachers once said, maybe I have an atomic bomb, but I only use a pistol. So we have the internal power, we have that structure, but we use subtlety and softness to overcome the opponent's force and to deal with their imbalance, or the nature of their attack. Now, the better your opponent is at doing the same thing, the more messy it will look. So often you'll see people watching a fight or a push hands match, and they'll say, oh, that's not really Tai Chi, that's just wrestling. Well, it could very well be very good Tai Chi, but people are not going to manifest the most beautiful, wonderful technique if their opponent is also skilled. So if you have two opponents who are very skilled at maintaining balance and harmony, and they engage each other in a contest, in a friendly contest, it will look messy. Two people of the same level will look like children fighting. If they're two low-level people, they'll look like children fighting. If they are two high-level people, they will look like children fighting. However, if you have one high-level person and one low-level person, it will be a very beautiful and graceful thing, whereas the high-level person very gracefully does a subtle movement, and the low-level person very gracefully goes flying across the room and into a wall or a passing vehicle. Now, however, if you have two extremely high-level people, they will be making changes so subtly that an observer may not be able to tell that there's any conflict at all. The two of them will be making changes at a very subtle level of intent and motivation. You may not actually see any kind of physical engagement. So, Tai Chi philosophy teaches us on a basic level to be like water, to be yielding to the most subtle force, yet powerful and irresistible as the ocean. When the opponent uses force, we use softness. Where there is an opening, we flow right through. If they push, we pull. If they pull, we follow. If they miss, we don't resist. Well, if they push, we don't necessarily pull. What we'll actually do is engage and neutralize their force, allowing them to push, but modifying their push in such a way that it doesn't affect our balance, that we maintain a harmony of yin and yang. So, as a principle, we seek internal balance, and we modify our position relative to the opponent's force in a way that helps to improve our balance. We move at right angles to the opponent's force rather than resisting it or surrendering to it. In this way, we allow the opponent's own aggression to disarm them. Now, understanding the nature of yin and yang allows us to see our own contribution to the opponent's attack. It also allows us to find the strengths in our own weaknesses and the weaknesses in our opponent's strengths. We learn that when an opponent's offensive energy increases, his or her defensive energy decreases. We also see how the same is true for ourselves. So this leads us to a level of skill which requires balancing attack and defense, and finally eliminating any kind of differentiation of attack and defense as absolutes, or even being relative to each other. Attack and defense become one, and we achieve a state we sometimes call emptiness. And this leads to a state of being and a method of engaging that involves attacking without attacking and defending without defending. Awareness and structure allow us to transcend technique. Now, the state of emptiness is an internal stillness that exists when the ego and individual emotions are set aside. It's what some people call being one with the universe. And in this state, there is no enemy. The opponent defeats themselves by the nature of their own attack. And when you learn the physical skills that are used in combat, you often progress in stages. First, you'll learn the basic technique that are used when the opponent has you at a disadvantage. This is why some people say that most martial arts first teach you how to lose. Next, you learn to intercept such attacks and prevent the opponent from getting you at a disadvantage. And this is learning how to win. Then you learn how to prevent the attack from forming through sensing the opponent's intent. And then you learn how to prevent the conflict altogether by sensing and neutralization the motivation of their attack. The final stage is a level of achievement called no enemy. When you reach this level, you experience a level of rapport with all things. You understand their needs and fears and deal with them as if their needs and fears were your own. An act of compassion then prevents and or neutralizes conflict. But until you have achieved this high level of skill, you may need to use lower level techniques. But the point to remember is that the purpose of training is to seek peace and harmony. To attach one's goals to conflict guarantees inevitable defeat. The most notable military strategist in history may have been Sun Tzu, the author of The Art of War. And he lived in the 6th century BC. And his strategies are still used by military planners today and are applied in war. They're also used in business and politics. But he wrote that since no battle is without loss, it is a bad strategy to engage in battle. Even when you are victorious 100% of the time, the only true victory is the one that is achieved without engaging in bloody conflict. When we engage in bloody conflict, we automatically lose our own balance. And that's the thing that we're trying to defend in the first place. So, if you remember what the whole purpose of self-defense is, you will remember that you cannot learn to defend yourself without cultivating that which you want to defend. Just as in politics and in war, you cannot effectively defend a way of life if you do not also spend the resources on developing and cultivating the ability for people in your country to have that way of life.